G'day, and welcome back to another episode of Pushing 50. You're with Ben, and today's episode, which will be broken up into several segments, is all around aviation and exciting times that I had in aviation. A little bit of a prelude, I learnt to fly in a de Havilland Tiger Moth, which is a 1931 design. The particular Tiger Moth I learnt to fly in is Echo India, and it was a November 1940 manufacture. I did my what they call ab initio training in a Tiger Moth, and I was the first person in about 30 odd years to do ab initio training in Tiger Moth again. So very, very special. Ab initio is learning to fly. So basically going from zero experience to solo and what they call a general flying progress test. Once you've done that, which is anywhere from sort of 15, 20, 25 hours, you then move through to navigation component and learning how to navigate. First you learn to fly and then you learn to navigate. So my navigation component was done in a Cessna 172, and that's where the story starts today. The 172 in question was November Charlie Oscar, NCO. Very dear to my heart, and it was owned by a lovely lady who learnt to fly in the plane at the age of 50 plus. Didn't look 50 plus, but she learnt to fly in that plane, and her name was Leonie. So the aircraft on this particular day was pretty much fresh out of maintenance, and I was doing one of my navigation training exercises. So it's about a 3-hour round trip that I was doing on that day. So jumped in the plane. After doing a thorough daily inspection. What you can do in a daily inspection is check all the wet components, fuel, oil, propeller, etc., and then move around the aircraft and check out all of the moving parts, rudder, elevator, ailerons, etc., and tyres. All the basic things that you can see from the outside of an aircraft. We are trained to look at these components in a different way than someone just going to say, oh, look at that, that's an aeroplane. So daily inspection's done, signed the maintenance release, we're ready to go. I've done a flight plan because we're doing a 3-hour navigation route. I think that day we were planning to go to Tamworth, from Cessnock Airport, and that's only about an hour and a bit away, hour and a half. Coming back via a different route, so all the landmarks changed, the Liverpool Ranges, the Hunter Valley, certain power stations which are currently closing, like Lake Liddell, and Ararian Power Station, and doing a big round trip basically and coming back to Cessnock. So we did our engine checks, etc., magneto checks. We lined up on the runway and I proceeded to take off. I was already had done my check flights in the Cessna, so I knew what the Cessna was all about, the 172. We took off on runway 35 at Cessnock Airport, and only after reaching about 250 to 400 feet above ground level after takeoff, I had a gust. There was a little bit of a westerly blowing, so had a gust from left to right, which lifted the left wing. Sitting in the left-hand seat, hand on the throttle and left hand on the yoke, which controls the roll and the pitch of the aircraft. It lifted the left wing a little bit, so I found it a little bit difficult to put left input in, or left roll, and did that to maintain wings level on the climb. I noticed immediately after wings going level, this is 400, 500 feet above ground level. My instructor, because I already knew how to fly and he taught me from scratch, he was pretty much kicked back in his seat and ready for a snooze until we got close to Tamworth, or unless I had questions. He's already shut his eyes and decided, let him do his job. He knows the way out of the valley because I'd flown around this area for quite a while in the Tiger Moth. After that left hand down correction with a strange feeling coming through the yoke, I'd maintained wings level, but the yoke is supposed to be 90 degrees when you're straight and level. There was something wrong because the yoke on the 172, the steering wheel, was at about a 45 degree angle in straight and level flight, continuing to climb out after takeoff. I'm assessing the situation. I'm like, eyes wide open, and my hand is there, the yoke's there, right hand's on the throttle, of course, making sure we've got full power to continue a constant climb. I maintained that attitude, and probably a good 30 seconds went past, and I'm like, this is not right. Something is wrong. I've said to my instructor that, hey mate, something's wrong. And he sort of, lifted his head up because he was getting ready for a 3-hour trip. He's not interested in the basic stuff that we were doing, just climbing out to altitude. I said, something's wrong. And he sat up a little bit, pretty much nonchalant. He's a seasoned instructor and a seasoned pilot. And I'm not talking salt and pepper. Mind you, he could give a fair bit of salt when things were required. Those of you who know I'm talking about will understand exactly what I'm saying. He goes, what's wrong? I said, I'm in straight and level flight. He goes, yeah, I know. I can see that. I said, look at the yoke. Look at the steering wheel. It's at a 45 degree angle to the left. He immediately sits up and went, pulls the chair up from his recline position, pulls the chair in, and lo and behold, he's like, oh, my aircraft. And I've reciprocated with your aircraft and let go of the controls. So we all, always know who's flying the plane. There's a handing over, taking over technique in aircraft, which is I have control, you have control. So it's a challenge and response that is given by the two pilots or student and instructor. So he's continued climbing out after taking control, and we are quite some distance from Cessnock Airfield at this stage. He's continued climbing out towards Singleton, which is a mining town in the Hunter Valley. There is another airport or runway at the Singleton Army firing range, and there's also another private airport or runway, which is colloquially called Paul Rees's Strip, which is just to the west of the Singleton Army firing range. So we continued climbing up to around 3,000 to 3,500 feet. I am personally and audibly shitting myself. I was not happy with the situation that we'll continue to climb and get more height. This is early on in my training. Later on in aviation, you find out that altitude is your friend. The higher you are, the safer you are. No one ever collided with the sky; they only collide with the ground. So I'm telling Warwick, look, there's an airport over there, there's another runway over there, or we can go back to Cessnock. We need to get this plane on the ground as soon as possible. Needs to be done. We need to get on the ground as soon as possible, mate. There is a problem with the aircraft. Warwick, cool, calm, and collected. We need to test the aircraft first to find out what sort of control we have over the aircraft. So, in his wisdom, and obviously a lot of wisdom under his belt, needed to check pitch. How much up and down control do we have? How much roll left and right do we have? And how much yaw left and right do we have? So the 3 axes of flight. Obviously nothing wrong with the engine, so we don't need to worry about that component. So after several minutes of Warwick flying, checking out the roll situation, no problems with pitch, no problems with yaw. It was just simply the yoke is 45 degrees left in straight and level flight. He flew very smoothly with what I would call a heightened sense of awareness in a big orbit and aimed back towards Cessnock. So we joined the circuit back at Cessnock, and there was no apparent problems except for the position of the yoke being at 45 degrees left instead of what we would consider straight and level. Landed back at Cessnock Airport, uneventful landing, very smooth. Obviously, when shit goes wrong, your level of attention is raised. It becomes one of the smoothest flights that you've ever had. So landed with no apparent issues back at Cessnock. Took the aircraft straight back to the maintenance facility, and it was discovered that, well, basically how the ailerons work is a set of cables that go from the control column through the fuselage out to the high wing and around effectively what's like a bicycle cog with a chain. And I don't know exactly at this stage, but I'm assuming that the tension on the chain around the bicycle cog was incorrect, and it actually slipped on that bicycle cog, which made us go from that to that in straight and level flight. So the chain had skipped a few teeth and didn't disengage. The chain didn't fall off like you would experience in on a bicycle, for the simple fact that there's guides, etc., that hold the chain onto that cog. It's a very safe design. That's why Cessna, probably one of the most successful aircraft that the world's ever seen. So it's a very safe design, but to a novice pilot that I was, extremely scary situation. So that was my first, I guess you would call, partial aileron failure. So going to leave it there with pushing 50 on part 1 of 4 of aviation issues that I've had. Next we'll come back to a partial engine failure, and after that we'll go to a full engine failure, which was an eye-opener to say the least. And after that we'll think about 2 other incidences that have occurred during my early years of aviation, of which I don't have many, but it's going to be interesting to explain exactly what happened to you. One of those may, just depending on legalities, it may be one of oh, very, very few people that have survived that particular issue with a tiger moth. But thank you again for listening, and this has been Pushing 50.